Matterport just proclaimed this week upcoming as Military Appreciation Week. This has been an ongoing theme here in the Quad Cities. We're a very military-friendly community, and we appreciate that recognition that everybody does day in, day out, 365 days a year to recognize the value of our military and veterans that live amongst us here in the Quad Cities area. Want to thank our sponsor of today's event, which is AM General. They're a great defense and manufacturing contractor doing work here in the Quad Cities area. So the Rock Island Arsenal is going to be the highlight of today's event. They're our leading employer here in the Quad Cities area. They drive our regional economy, and they do amazing work that impacts people here and around the world. The Rock Island Arsenal is so important to the Quad Cities community that we have a partner organization here at the Quad Cities Chamber called the Rock Island Arsenal Defense Alliance. It's comprised of local mayors and county leaders, private sector, education sector, as well as several retired military leaders. This organization is led by Scott Welker, and this team advocates for the Rock Island Arsenal and our region's defense industry's future growth. Over the years, this group has partnered with our bi-state congressional delegation to support major advancements in funding that support and advance the Rock Island Arsenal's mission here and abroad. So as time allows today, we're going to have a great presentation, but I want to ask you to feel free to ask any questions that you have. Please direct them to the Q&A box here on Zoom. And if you type in that question, we will do our best to respond at the end of today's presentation. So starting off, I'm going to introduce our two speakers. I'm joined by Mr. Matthew Sannito and Colonel Todd Allison. I'm going to introduce Matt first. He's the Deputy to the Commanding General for Army Sustainment Command. Matt assumed responsibility of this position in November of 2019. In his role, he leads and directs the command's global sustainment mission that encompasses a workforce of approximately 500 soldiers, 7,400 civilians, and 40,000 contractors. What a big role and responsibility. Army Sustainment Command links strategic and operational sustainment capabilities to tactical units, integrates and synchronizes materiel distribution, and enables Army readiness. Mr. Sannito comes with a distinguished background. He's a graduate of the Army War College, has a master's degree in logistics management, and a dual BA degrees in finance and management from Loras College here in the greater Quad Cities area. Little background on Colonel Todd Allison, who is the Garrison commander of the U.S. Army Garrison Rock Island Arsenal. He took command of this position in July of 2020. So he started off last summer and had an interesting time to assume leadership. Colonel Allison was commissioned as a quartermaster officer after graduating from the University of Pittsburgh with a degree in economics. It's my background too, Todd, so kudos to you. Prior to being stationed here at the Rock Island Arsenal, he was at Fort Bragg, Fort Lee in Virginia, Fort Carson in Colorado, Fort Hood in Texas, Camp H.M. Smith in Hawaii, and Fort Shafter in Hawaii. So he has a breadth of experience around the country. He also served in Operation Enduring Freedom in Afghanistan and completed 3 deployments in Iraq to total 35 months in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom. In his civilian role, he has a master's degree, in his civilian education, he has a master's degree in national security and strategic studies from the War College, the Naval War College, that is, and also has experience from the Joint and Combined Warfighting School at the Joint Forces Staff College. Wow, these are two well-experienced individuals that are joining us today. I want to thank you both for your service to our country, and here in the Quad Cities, we're lucky to have you. So let's start off today's program. Matt, I'm going to turn it over to you to begin today's Rock Island Arsenal update.
Yeah, hey Paul, and to the greater chamber members, hey, thanks a lot for allowing Todd and myself spend a little bit of time with you today to talk about the Army story, and specifically talking about a little bit that's going on here at the island itself, and then a little bit of what this island has been doing for the greater nation over the last 18 months. So I know I'll probably disrupt the whole forum on how the chamber wants this to happen, but like any typical Army presentation, we've got some slides. We will definitely go through the slides, but please, at any point in time, if there's a question or comment, I'm more than open to you guys just hitting it at that point in time. Or there's definitely time towards the end that we can have a conversation as well. But I intend for this hopefully to be more of a conversation, but I'm definitely prepared to give you some comments on what's going on with the island. So with that, if I could go to the next slide, please. Hopefully what you're seeing right now, it's a slide that says Rock Island Arsenal. The emphasis here on this slide is twofold. First, it's just to kind of remind everybody that the Arsenal is the only full service installation that the Army has within about a 150-mile radius. There is the Naval Center up in Greater Chicago, and there is Scott Air Force Base down in St. Louis. But outside of that, I mean, the island here is servicing Illinois, Iowa, Minnesota, and there are bits of other individuals in some other states that do use us, right? And so what do they come here to the island for? We do have a medical clinic. It is a great capability that individuals can see a doctor, can see some nurses on basic medical needs, get their prescriptions. And so that's very important that we maintain that service here for active duty, family members, specifically retirees. And some of our civilians now are gaining access to some of the services as well. We've got a commissary, we've got the exchange here. During tax season time, I think we still even help retirees and obviously our soldiers and do their tax preparation. So it's really important for us that we provide these services because it helps us stay connected with the community. It helps them to know that we're here and that we've got capabilities that they can definitely tie into. And then in second, and the last aspect of this slide is, even though you see these great signs at the 3 entry points to the island and it says U.S. Army, I don't want people to forget that we do have all of the military services with some representation here on the island, as well as other DoD organizations here. And again, it's just powerful to stay connected in the crosstalk, and helps us leverage capabilities on how we can better support the military services and then the broader community externally. So if I would, I'd go to the next slide. So it definitely wouldn't be a traditional Army presentation if there wasn't, a slide or two with just a bunch of data. And so I promise, this is one of two of data, and this is the worst slide, so it'll get a little easier as we go. But just to try to orient you to the slide and what's really kind of important here. So starting on the left-hand side in that little spreadsheet, it just breaks down what the current population looks like here on the Arsenal. Paul indicated that we're the #1 employer. I know it's like the stock market. At any given hour, we're fighting against the medical industry and John Deere, but we're not really fighting, and we're not trying to be the #1 employer. It just gives you optics that we do have a large population. I would have said 18 months ago that works on the island, but now I'm saying I've got 6,100 great Americans that are assigned and employed through the island, because many of those individuals are still doing much of what you guys are doing. They are working from home or working from some other offsite location, because we are still very much in the COVID fight and making sure that we've got the right protective measures in place so that our workforce is safe and can execute their mission from safe locations. It's a great thing that I'm an island, because I get to straddle the fence in terms of like Iowa and Illinois. I take no sides, right? Both states are phenomenal partners, and we just we're just happy that both states are great patrons, and they offer great capabilities to our families, our soldiers, and our civilians. And truth be told, like that little 4%, there are some interesting individuals that, for whatever reason, live up in Wisconsin and do that massive commute each day. And then just down below a little bit in the center, you remember this, but over the last 2 years, we have seen growth in terms of our housing construction here on the island. We advocated collectively, and we're able to get military construction, and we built about 71 brand new living quarters. So if you're on the Iowa side, you can see that new housing that's closer to the Davenport House, and then we built some new housing structure if you come from the Moline Gate on Rodman Avenue. So we were happy that we were able to get more of our military family members on an installation, because it is important that many of our soldiers like living within the military community. But that said, there's just as many that enjoy living off post as well. We got a lot of veterans. Paul indicated, the economic impact to the broader community. And so we try to stay connected with Paul. Truth be told, with COVID, we kind of, got into our fighting position, and our focus was on, protecting the workforce and making sure we're executing our missions effectively. And now that we feel as if like conditions are set that we can, safely, re-engage in discussions, we're focusing now on reestablishing our relationships. And so, we met with Paul, a couple of weeks ago with the mayors. That's why we're having a conversation today, because we as the island, we recognize the strategic importance in keeping the community abreast of what's going on here, so we can all become good advocates for, the island, the infrastructure, the workforce, and the mission that we do each and every day. I'll go to the next slide. Okay, so this is the last data slide. So if I were to just break it down a little bit further, out of the 6,100 employees, there are really 8 big organizations here on the island. The one that I work for, Army Sustainment Command, First Army, who has the senior officer on the island, Lieutenant General James, Joint Munitions Command, Todd's command as the Garrison. We've got the factory, of course. We've got the Corps of Engineers. They have a district office here on the post in the clock tower. My great partner, Jay Carr, who I could not live and execute my mission without him, because everything I do is predominantly through contracts. And so he's got a large portfolio. And then I'll talk a little bit about the Civilian Human Resource Agency, but Chara, this has grown over the last few years as this great workforce has been able to deliver on what we call time to hire within the federal government. Essentially, as vacancies occur, they have proven to be a center of excellence in being able to attract, find, and bring new individuals within our formation very quickly. And so I think in the last 24 months, DOD through the Department of Education, DODEA, recognized this, and about 200 or 300 pure civilian authorizations were transferred out here to the island, and this center here in Rock Island is supporting all of DODEA's international schools in hiring the right employees to support the teaching of military families kids. These numbers on the slide, they truly just reflect what that population is here on the island. There is a broader population that each one of these commands has. So as Paul indicated, using Army Sustainment Command as the example on the top left, you'd have to add about another 35,000 individuals into that organization that we have globally dispersed around another 100 locations. So we definitely have a Rock Island arsenal, focus and concentration, as well as a very dispersed global mission that the people physically located here have a direct connection and relation to supporting the Army, DOD, and in some instances, other federal agencies, the State Department, Health and Human Services. And we'll go into that a little bit. As Paul said, I do get to brag about my organization for a little bit, but I'll do my best not to, focus too much time on it. So we'll go to the next slide. So the portfolio, I hope I don't spend too much time, but if we were to then take those commands and just kind of break it down another level in terms of what we say in the Army, what our mission is, or what our focus is, each and every day, it is kind of broad in terms of the portfolio, and many of the organizations here on the island are headquarters organizations that I said have that global responsibility and impact on. But it's pretty diverse. If you start on the upper left of the slide with equipment sustainment, that's a fancy way of saying we help the Army do maintenance on every form of equipment that we have within our inventory. From I think those are Abrams tanks that are in the photographs, fixing tanks, to fixing rifles, to fixing refrigerators in our dining facility. So we've got a pretty broad and depth portfolio on what we have to maintain. If you shift over to the upper right of the slide with the additive and advanced manufacturing, that's all associated to the factory. I'm pointing behind me only because that's where the factory is located for me right now. This is a new capability that has been in place. They've been championing this for probably about the last 3 to 4 years. And I think within the last 12 months, we've seen some good ramping up of requirements coming through. But, this is a very powerful capability here on the island and what it does for the Army and DoD, because as you can imagine, a lot of our equipment that we have in the Army is it's old, it's decades old. And many of the companies that had originally built this in terms of platforms and parts, they don't exist anymore. And so this is a great way to help address the risk with obsolescence in our Army. And so they are building, through polymer technology, all these great capabilities that just helps mitigate risk for the Army and the DoD. And in fact, we saw some of this in the COVID environment where the factory was called upon to help build various ventilator components as ventilators were in demand. And so they, stepped up to the call and helped this nation. If you drop right below that, the organic industrial base, that's again a fancy way of saying we've got tremendous artisans in the factory that just have a phenomenal capability of taking raw material and spitting out this major end item in terms of parts or the ambulance production line. So really craftsmen, artisans, skilled individuals in that factory. First Army's got a great mission that they've got to focus on training and equipping the reserve components in the Army, because we rely upon the Guard and the reserves tremendously because we don't have everybody in the active component. And so they have a responsibility, and it's critical because they get called upon all the time to step up and help us. To the munitions sustainment, we've got Joint Munitions Command. Their sole focus here at the headquarters through its depots across the U.S. is the development, the production, the transportation, and the movement of lethal ammunition for our Army. And so clearly we could not do the Army's missions without actually having munitions. And then I talked about Army Contracting Command. Most of the organizations here on the island execute their missions each and every day through the use of contracts, and so that's important. I'll go to the next slide. So the COVID environment. So just like you, we kind of had to learn this as we went. And we're much better now than where we were. And it's been kind of a blended operation for us. And so kind of in the upper left, you can see just some images of us maximizing technology. Much more so here on the island, because we have a lot of white collar type operations. And so I still have about 70% of my organization that's in a telework environment. And that's okay. And it's helping us rethink our calculus as we come out of COVID to figure out, how much of this technology are we going to continue to leverage, and who really has to come back to the old, iron structure buildings, because we're finding tremendous productivity increases and morale, benefits by individuals having greater flexibility of where they work. And so we're wrestling with that, but it's a good challenge for us to have. And then on the other side, we've got individuals that, COVID was around March of last year, really. And about 30 days later, we returned about 95% of the workforce that, we never figured out how to, deliver food virtually in our dining facilities. And so you can see a photograph. This is over in Europe, where through proper protective equipment, proper standoff distances, different, cleaning protocols, and putting the right barriers in place, we were able to bring the workforce back to execute some missions that just required them to be on site. I'll go to the next slide. Okay, here's where I get to brag just a little bit. So you may know this or you may not. I don't mean to insult anybody's intelligence, but Army Sustainment Command was called upon by DoD and Health and Human Services to help address COVID across the nation. So in the upper left, what you see there is a quarantine site that we built within 14 days at Fort Bragg, because we still had soldiers all around the world that were coming back to the U.S., coming off of missions in Iraq and Afghanistan, and yet we could not put them back into the general population because we had yet to test them. We were still learning what was the incubation period, and so we set up these quarantine sites at various installations in the U.S. So where they could sleep, where they could work out, wireless capability, feeding, workout rooms, you name it. So we're pretty proud that the nation, turned to us here in Rock Island and through various contracts, put these quarantine capabilities at various installations. Moving to the right with the photographs of those thumbs up, it was unfortunate that we had employees that did get COVID, but the great thing after they recovered was they stepped up to the call as we were looking at therapeutics. And so that's an image of individuals having their plasma, cycled out of their body to get the right type of, therapeutic treatments. And so they donated their plasma to the cause of duty to help, get some of the therapeutics that we have out there right now. So then the lower left, again, you can see proper PPP and just a different way of how we still have to feed soldiers and make sure that we are distributing food in a safe manner, or in a safer manner, to our soldiers. And then the last photo, early on when New York City was the epicenter of COVID, we got called upon again by the state of New York through the Corps of Engineers to help build a temporary hospital. And so the hard structure you see is an actual hospital in New Jersey. And then the white structure is the hospital that we erected in about 20 days in their parking lot. That was a 100-person capability that once you walked in, you wouldn't have known that you were in a temporary hospital. Had all the bedding, all the hookups, all the ventilators, all that capability that you would expect to see. And we were proud to do that because that helped alleviate pressure elsewhere within the broader New Jersey, New York City area. And that was all done out of the headquarters here on the island. And in fact, we had civilians and we activated a reserve unit that we have, and they actually went out to the sites to help ensure proper QA and oversight was being executed. And then one last thing, not on the slide, but we're also proud that we were called upon through Operation Warp Speed and through Health and Human Services, where we helped establish over 100 clinical sites for phase 3 trials for the Moderna, the Janssen, and the AstraZeneca vaccine. And so, we did through procurement of these temporary structures and all the services you would expect, electricity, power, water, refrigeration. We played a very, very small part in where we're at now in the nation of having actual vaccines and shots in arms. So we're very proud with that. Next slide. And I think for time, this is too much bragging of Army Sustainment Command. But if you're like my house, we hoard things at time, right? Put things in boxes, and there's a great storage area in the house, and we always have great intentions of going and looking at it again, and then never do. Well, the Army's no different. We're always an Army in motion of new equipment coming into the Army, and through deployments, other priorities, missions, you name it. The Army has kind of hoarded equipment over the years in terms of tens of hundreds of thousands of pieces. And so the Army yet again came to us and asked what we could do to help alleviate this equipment, because it was costing money, it was costing man hours to account for, and there was equipment not in the right unit's hands, and we needed to maximize readiness so they could execute their warfighting functions. And so I'm proud to say over the last 3 months, again, through the development through this headquarters, executing and turning in about 20,000 pieces, and so we're seeing almost 10 times the turn in of what we saw last year of equipment. So we're getting after freeing up soldier time, less cost to the Army, and building readiness out in those formations. So I'll take a tactical pause because I know Todd Allison's next.
Thanks, Matt. Good job. We'll get to, I think before Colonel Allison speaks, I wanted to pose the question that I believe was directed at you. And in years past, there's been an in-person APBI hosted, and we had a question from Scott at Quadister asking if there'd be a similar in-person industry day anytime soon.
Scott, great question. It's the last slide. So the answer is yes. So mark the 9th of June, okay, as our upcoming advanced planning briefing to companies. It will be virtual. We still have to abide by DoD policies in terms of how many people we can actually bring. And so we did this virtual last year, got great feedback, but the short answer is yes. And our small business office here on the island will ensure that Paul and his team, has the latest and greatest information so everybody knows how to sign up. And we get all that advanced information about what we're looking over the next 3 to 5 years of requirements. So you guys can plan appropriately in terms of your capture dollars, where you want to focus your energies at. But great question. Thank you.
Matt, thank you. And Colonel Allison, thanks for letting me poke in there and scoop Matt on his last slide, because I know that we have another industry day that I didn't want to get confused with. So Colonel Allison, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Paul Rumler, and members of the Quad Cities Chamber and all those attending today. It is an honor and a pleasure to be able to present to you as the Garrison Commander here on Rock Island Arsenal. And thank you for the hearty introduction. Well, one thing, you didn't miss it, but I need to mention it because I think it's important for the team assembled here today, is I was very fortunate to be stationed here summer of 2019. So before the pandemic hit, I was up at our Army Sustainment Command headquarters working as Mr. Sannito and General Mitchell's chief planner. And so we had a lot of wicked problems to solve heading into 2020. And they gave me a reprieve and released me from the headquarters and let me come down and spend some time commanding here at the Garrison at Rock Island Arsenal. What they really did was take me from one challenge and move me on to another. And like you said, it has been a unique opportunity to command the Garrison here during a pandemic. But the silver lining has been it's brought this arsenal and the installation and the partners on this installation closer to the community. And so during that time, I've had the unique opportunity over the last 10 months to present out about what the arsenal is doing and the state of the arsenal. The Illinois governor back in the fall hosted their first Illinois State of the Bases, and my joint partners out at Great Lakes and Scott Air Force Base we're able to present out on our various arsenals. And I also took that same presentation or a similar version of it to the Bi-State Regional Commission in December before heading into the new year. And I'm going to brief you on some initiatives today, but the real 3 points that I took to those forums, and I would say it's still relevant today, is that the state of the arsenal in the future of the arsenal is on a strong foundation and it has unlimited potential, and that's primarily for 3 points. One, Rock Island Arsenal, as Mr. Sannito laid out very eloquently, it is an Army priority. There are extremely important organizations here that have a global impact, not only locally and regionally, but also across the globe. And that's indicative on their important missions. The other one is that we're an economic driver in the region. You saw some of the highlights about that. Those are important factors when the Army makes decisions about where they base their soldiers and their units. And lastly, none of those first 2 points could be relevant if it wasn't founded on a strong relationship that the Arsenal and all our installation partners here have with the community. And as I mentioned earlier, when I came on board in the middle of a pandemic and had a virtual change of command ceremony, it didn't stop me from being able to form strong connections with our mayors and elected officials and city managers. And for those who aren't sure what a garrison commander does, I'm essentially General Mitchell and Mr. Sannito's city manager, right? So I make sure that this place is protected, public works, the buildings operate, keep the lights on. Outside my window here, there's a large construction project on one of our east streets that has a lot of potholes and drainage. And so that, we're constantly fixing and renovating this installation so that it's viable. But what we're doing, as we come out of the pandemic, we've got a lot of great ideas to get back to a new normal and in many ways take the Arsenal to new heights. Next week, I'm going to take a presentation to Mr. Sannito and the senior leadership here for our FY22 installation plan. And that installation plan is going to start to plant the seeds coming out of the pandemic of what do we need to do to improve the installation's performance, but also connect us with the community. And one of the things, that we want to invest in is how do we make Rock Island Arsenal relevant to the community, as well as a recreational destination, right? So this is a National Historic Landmark that has some amazing assets, and we're going to talk about a couple of those here in a second. So if we could go to the next slide. All right, I don't know if I'm frozen or delayed. So as they're pulling up the next slide, when I came on board last summer, we were in the process of going back to the United States Army and getting a 2-year extension on the enhanced use lease. Several of the partners on here today may remember that our historic golf club and golf course was shut down over the last few years based on some budget cost reductions and several other things. And so what we're in the process of doing is taking these assets, important historical assets, and we're taking them out to industry. And we are actively advertising a virtual industry day that'll be on May 26th. It'll be held on a Zoom platform similar to this. The Corps of Engineers is responsible for hosting the industry day. But the partners here at the Garrison and the Senior Command, Army Sustainment Command are all in, and we've been engaging with the Quad Cities Chamber and many of our partners about this for those several months now. As a matter of fact, it was the vice of the chamber and some other partners that we delay the industry day because we were originally going to have it in January. But as we come out of the economic recovery from the pandemic, we think that it's well suited in the end of May to propose an investment opportunity to lease this property and develop it. You may be asking, well, if it wasn't successful the first time, how is it going to be successful a second go around? Well, what we did was we listened to our partners, our industry partners who made proposals last time, and what we found out is that like many things with the Army and Department of Defense, there's a lot of bureaucracy and hurdles, and so we went back to the Department of the Army and asked to make this enhanced use lease as flexible as possible. And so we're proud to report that this enhanced use lease will lift a lot of the limitations to build, to take down old structures, and essentially really gives, with obvious some exceptions, gives very little restrictions to industry to come on and look at the properties and come up with a business plan and propose a lease that will enhance both the arsenal and the community area. And so 26 May is going to be basically a virtual day where they're going to kind of do a couple sessions, one in the morning, one in the afternoon. They're going to give all the facts and information out about it. And then they'll go into source selection. And so there's some links on here. It's on our social media sites. We've been pushing it out. We've actually garnered, believe it or not, I just got an update from the Corps of Engineers. They've received quite a few calls. And so I'm cautiously optimistic that we're going to get, as we go to sourcing in this summer, we'll get several proposals. And I think the biggest challenge we'll have is deciding, which one is the best one for the installation in the community. Again, that's cautiously optimistic. And so one of the things that we're doing too, and there's a lot of word of mouth in the Quad Cities is probably one of the strongest communication tools that we have. And if you go to the next slide, one of the challenges that I learned about when I came here and experienced it a little bit myself was our access control is governed by Department of Defense and Department of the Army force protection guidelines to keep the assets here in the Army safe. Now, that requires 2 forms of ID and NCIC background check. And so what it does is it kind of creates a barrier to get onto the arsenal. I'm happy to report that due to the pandemic recovery, we have put in place. We have fully recovered with the exception of the CDC guidelines to distance, mask, and hygiene. And we're open. The Rock Island Arsenal has been open for a few months now, but getting that word out has been a challenge. A lot of people, recall that, last spring, summer, we went to a higher health protection level and we closed our gates. But last January, as I mentioned, I was up at Army Sustainment Command during the Iranian aggression. We had to also increase our force protection level. And so we really had a challenge of reporting to everybody that, no, you can come get an annual pass, that the Arsenal is open for authorized recreation for the public. For instance, you can come on here and get a pass to go to the veteran cemetery to visit your loved ones. You can come on here to go to the museum when it's open, and I've got a report on that here pretty soon. You can go see the National Historic Landmarks. You can walk on our trails. You can go running. We've got several community partners, the Quad Cities Marathon and the Quad Cities Bike Club that tour the Mississippi River Valley want to use the Arsenal to transit their races and their rides. And so we're working with the community to have these events and be part of them. And so one of the things that we're doing to try to kind of change, get the message out that we're open, and it's been successful. We've held it once now, and we're holding it every Friday at the beginning of the month, first Friday, is we're doing a delivery roundup. As Mr. Sannito mentioned, we have 70 some new homes here on the Arsenal, over 250 some Army and Joint family members. And so they, just like you, want to be able to order a pizza or get an Uber so they can ride down to Moline or Davenport or Rock Island or East Moline and Bettendorf and enjoy all the great things that you can if you were living out in anywhere else in the Quad Cities. And so we've last time we held this, we were able to get 25 members of the community to come out and get a pass. Uber, Instacart, DoorDash, towing companies and whatnot, and really just wanted to report out to this group, come on down and get a pass. You'll get a background check. As I said, you have two forms of federal ID, and we'll get you a pass. And we're open 6 days a week. Sundays is the only day we're closed. And we'll move on to the next initiative I wanted to mention. As I said, we're open to that recreation that's authorized to the public. We've got Davenport House is opening back up. We're doing tours of our historic quarters 1 here this month, and that's open to the public as well. It costs $10. The museum is going through a $1.5 million renovation. Unfortunately, it is shut down due to that renovation. But this is exciting. The director for Center of Military History, Mr. Browery, came and visited Mr. Sannito and myself last year. And they are really, taking the second oldest museum in the United States Army to the next level. And so, as I mentioned earlier, this is a National Historic Landmark. There's literally a walking tour on here. This museum being the center of all that history and getting a renovation and a facelift is going to be phenomenal. So, to kind of wrap it up so we can get to that question and answer stuff, we want to hear from you. But as I mentioned, we're coming out of the pandemic. The state of the Arsenal is good. We have a lot of opportunities. We've got a lot of different business opportunities on how to make this an asset, not only for the Army, but for our community, to do recreation, to do business. And we've got a lot of plans, and there's unlimited potential. So with that, I'll pause and we'll move over to questions and any answers we can give today. So back to you, Paul. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Colonel. I do want to remind everybody, if you have questions, you can put them in the Q&A box. It looks like we have a few coming in. I have one follow-up question, Colonel, for you, and it's about access. You talked about coming on to Rock Island Arsenal. Can you real quick reinforce the opportunity for area residents? How do they do it if they want to come visit? How easy is it?
Yeah, thank you. Great question. So we have a visitor control center at the Moline gate. So when you come through the Moline, you can come on ramp, or you can come across the little bridge span. And as you're approaching the gate, there's signage that takes you to the right, and there's a large parking lot. You walk in there. You do have to wear your mask due to the pandemic right now. You walk in. You can either go online to the U.S. Army Garrison Rock Island Arsenal site and download a form. We just updated it to make sure that if you're a commercial partner or delivery driver or whatever, you can indicate that, and you fill it out, and you can either email that in and they'll process it and it'll be waiting for you when you arrive, or you can fill one right out there on a clipboard. You hand it in. They take your IDs. They do a real quick check in the NCIC system. That's an FBI managed database, as well as an Army integrated evaluation system, AIE. And those two systems come back and clear you. And then they print out essentially looks like an ID card with your picture on it. And you have a 1-year pass. Now, if you're a commercial partner that is doing business with one of our commands that was mentioned earlier on, or one that wasn't, if you're a contractor or your support to a contractor, you do have to indicate who your point of contact is on the arsenal if you're conducting business. If you're just a member of the community, like Paul had asked, and you just want to go to historic landmarks, or do some sort of recreation or go to the cemetery, you just indicate that, and you don't have to claim a sponsor. You just have to pass the very quick background check. It usually only takes about 15 minutes, depending on whether there's a line. So I hope that answered your question.
It does. Thanks, Colonel. It's a very easy process. I've gone through it. I'm in and out in 10 or 15 minutes, and then I'm set for the year. So thanks for making that available to us, Colonel. Matt, I have a few questions that came in via text to me. It's a two-pronged question. The first one is, there's so many commands on Rock Island Arsenal. You gave us an overview of some. What's the growing command that maybe the rest of the community doesn't know about? What can you bring to life outside of ASC or JMC or JMTC? Is there a growing opportunity to learn about new things happening at Rock Island?
From a growth standpoint, I mean, I guess there's a couple ways you can address it. I mean, if you're focusing growth in terms of positions within an organization, that's one way. In terms of growth of seeing additional dollars or new missions, we can address it that way. So I'll try to take it both ways. So from a people standpoint, as I said, I think as CHARA continues to prove itself as kind of like the center of excellence in hiring people quickly, I think CHARA has the opportunity of getting more. I also with Army Contracting Command Rock Island, also another almost 100% civilian organization. They are also a great capability and proven that they know how to award contracts quickly. And so it's almost like every other month I'm hearing Jay Carr talk about how the Army is bringing, DoD is bringing new missions to them. And so I can't talk specifically on whether or not he's also seeing the same people growth, but I would expect that would be true as new missions. In terms of dollars and missions, I would tell you almost all of the organizations here on the island are seeing new things come their way. It's true for ASC, it's true for JMC, it's true for Army Contracting Command. But happy to write that subject down, Paul, and happy to do another session of a deep dive to go into more detail on that.
Terrific. Thanks, Matt, on that one. I have a follow-up for Army Sustainment Command. You've had a growing mission over the last decade plus. Where do you see Army Sustainment Command growing? Is there an opportunity to continue to manage all of Army logistics from Army Sustainment Command?
I mean, I think from our portfolio, what I have today is more than likely what it will be into the future. There's always concern about span of control. There's always concern about headquarters and downtrace units getting too much mission. We do have 7 other brigade structures to help orchestrate the management of our distributed organization. But truth be told, I'm not seeing conversations out there saying Army Sustainment Command, let's give you more. We're already have a pretty diverse portfolio that I don't envision us getting a new mission in logistics in the Army.
All right. Well, thanks for taking that one head on. Colonel Allison, I'm coming to you. We have a question from Jason Gordon with Valley Construction, also past Quad Cities Chamber employee who was spearheading a lot of the relationships with Rock Island Arsenal over the years. So we have some inside questions here. But the community has always tried to partner with Rock Island to develop infrastructure or benefits to commands or the residents there. This is a question about the Defense Community Infrastructure Program. Are there any infrastructure projects that are in and around the base that are in the community that we should be partnering on and leveraging those funds?
Hey, thank you for that question. When I came on board last summer, I know that we endorsed the city of Davenport requesting funding through the Department of Transportation along one of the access routes to the government bridge. That was a grant system. I don't think it was a DSIP grant money, but it was just an example about how if there's an infrastructure like a key road to, where our government employees have to commute across the local and state roads, a community can receive funding and get endorsement from their government partners or Army partners here on the installation. We did recently meet with some people helping the city of Moline plan revitalization down in their area, and what are some ideas and input we can give. And similarly, we talked to them about the ability to adapt the access on the Moline side to pedestrians and cyclists, because during the 100 days of spring and summer and fall, this is a great cycling and running community, and so right now those areas aren't optimized to safely let those that type of activity on there. But it would be great, as I mentioned before, the Tour of the Mississippi River Valley wants to use the Arsenal to transit from Moline to Davenport as part of their that annual ride, and again, that is an opportunity where if they had an idea and they wanted to improve it, they could get an endorsement from us, and we would in certain instances like that, if it was benefiting us as well as the community, we would endorse it, and then that grant money could be applied for and then made available. Those are, again, very small examples. What I try to explain to people who are interested in this topic is that this is a community. We're part of the community, so everybody that works here also lives here in the Quad Cities in the greater area, and so we have to have access to good schools, good hospitals, decent roads, decent housing, and that's at standards. And so there are many different ways to avenues to that grant money in the Defense Community Infrastructure Program. And we're actively partnering, as Paul mentioned, the Defense Alliance, to help the communities understand. And there's some great team of people out there that can help advise communities on how to write those project submissions. And I know the Defense Alliance in Quad Cities has access to those personnel and that team of people. So I hope that answered the question.
I think it does. Thanks, Colonel. We have a few more questions in the Q&A box that we're going to roll through. I don't know who might be best to take this one from Gino Berta, a great chamber member and veteran-owned business leader here. Asks, who do you recommend speaking with about assistance for service-disabled veteran-owned businesses?
So from my standpoint, I will definitely, Paul, if you give me the contact information, I will get my small business director linked. So we've got the right optics of what type of companies are there, what they're looking to, what capabilities they have, and then we can talk about up and coming requirements, which also is important that as I give you the 9 June content, which would be also another venue for those companies to come and get greater clarity. But I will give you my small business director's info, and then we will build that relationship.
Perfect. And we can pass that along to Gino. Thanks, Matt. Next question comes from Paul Raschuti with Serco. Matt, I think the first question is coming to you with what's the most challenging leadership challenge from the COVID environment? How do you see your organization reshaping as we emerge from the pandemic?
You know, the good thing, if there's any goodness, right? I mean, with Army Sustainment Command already being a distributed organization, having to continue to execute in that environment in COVID wasn't completely obscure to us. I'll tell you that the way in which we communicated was, I think, a little bit of a challenge initially. A lot of us like to do that physical face-to-face interaction, and we've grown comfortable with that. And at least I'll just speak to me, that by being able to rely on the face-to-face, my writing ability, had taken maybe a step backwards. And so what I've seen over time is leaders and employees having to, one, get better familiar with technology that exists, and two, making sure that we are writing clearly and concisely throughout the organization, and interacting in a much more frequent op tempo than what one would have probably expected by just having the flexibility doing drive-bys at various locations. So, communicating is always a challenge. It was no different in COVID, but I'll tell you, I think the challenging aspect that we're going to be going out of COVID is having a professional discussion on how much of the flexibilities that we have had in the pandemic, how much and what flexibilities are we going to carry forward in Army Sustainment Command, and as an Army, as we come out of this COVID environment.
Matt, thanks for asking that question. We have another question from Dr. Reggie Lawrence, who's the superintendent of the Rock Island Milan School District here in the Quad Cities. And he's asking, as an educator, he'd be interested in hearing the Arsenal's plans for providing programs or opportunities for job development at the high school level. This is a big priority for our Quad Cities community right now.
Yeah, no, hey, that's a great question. And look, I just took a brief this morning about how, a strategy in terms of reaching out, into the community to ensure that, college-bound, kids have an understanding that, it's honorable to serve as a civilian within the federal government. Because I think at times people think service to the Army and to the nation, translates to, having to, wear the uniform. It's an avenue. It's not the sole avenue. And so I self-admit that we have not done as good a job as we should. And so to Mr. Lawrence, I am more than open and want to engage in this conversation to ensure that there, one, is a strategy that aligns to your thinking and the needs within the school systems, to at least, having to have that conversation and introduce, the student population into civil service, and hopefully then attract them to take a look at us. And then I acknowledge that we also have to do a better job of reinvigorating, summer hire programs, making the commitment, because, we've got to set the demand signal so that the community also says, okay, they're interested, so now we are interested. So I think this is another one that we could probably spend another hour or two and just specifically talk on, and happy to do that.
Yep. Thanks, Matt. And I think 2 weeks ago, we had an apprenticeship signing ceremony with 7 high schools, and it was about taking high school students that are through these programs and getting them connected to area employers and getting them an inside look into what their future could look like, so they can decide how they want to continue their education, whether it be a certificate, an associate's degree, or a bachelor's degree or beyond. And we'd love to have the Rock Island Arsenal be a partner in that type of program, because I know you have a lot of opportunities that we could explore with our area high schools. I have time for about 2 more questions. I'm going to leave Paul Raschudi's to be the last question, but I have one in between. The city of Davenport recently partnered with HR Green for a flood study that was looking at what their future will look like in protecting against high waters. What's the Rock Island Arsenal's perspective, and what are you doing to plan for future flooding events since you're an island in the middle of the Mississippi River.
Todd, that's all yours, man. Go.
Hey, thank you. And I'll be real quick. We actually recently met with the NOAA team in the spring, and they briefed us on the flood impact. We look at flooding all the time. As a matter of fact, it's actually one of my responsibilities to mitigate flooding for the arsenal, so that it's still a viable asset. We learned a lot from the 2019 flood, and we actually put into place a series of projects to put in pump houses and drainage. Like I just mentioned, the East Street out here adjacent to my headquarters has significant wastewater and runoff water, new drainage being put in. We're putting in new pumps to be able to pump water off during high flood seasons, because it's not if it's going to happen, it's when it happens, and are we ready? And so right now we can mitigate flooding. They briefed me up to a certain height, and then when it gets over that, then we're doing our emergency action plans for flooding. Along the northern side, there's been significant levee development, but as I partner with my colleague down in the Corps of Engineers, who has a broader flood response, and recently briefed the Bi-State Regional Commission on that. Levees, just can't be put in. They've got to have studies and impact studies downriver, so we don't inadvertently build a levee that protects us, but then makes it worse for Davenport and cities downriver. So good question. We're always thinking about it. Our congressional delegations are always asking us about it. It is a topic of du jour. Over.
Thanks, Colonel. Last question comes from Paul Raschuti, and it's a question we all have on our minds. It's, I think, why you have so many participants here today. We want to know how we can best support you in your missions. How would you wrap up today with what can we do for you?
Look, I'll jump on that one first. Look, truth be told, doing this forum and having frequent engagements is probably the best way that the community can support us, because the more that we build the relationship and the more that we have the open crosstalk, then we can actually provide, hey, here's challenges, here's opportunities, and then you guys can nest and see, how as an organization can help us. As an example, right now it is the summer season for a permit change of station moves for the United States Army. We are going to move over 100,000 soldiers and families over the next 90 days, right? And so the island's no different. We're going to have officers and soldiers leave, and we're going to have new families come in. And so the more that I think we have conversations, and I can give you the optics in terms of the new density population and what spouses might be interested in employment, then I think that it's an awesome partnership that through Paul and all your companies, as we bring in these spouses that are eager and wanting employment, that we can hopefully help them out to in fact get employment. So short answer is, let's keep doing this. Let's do it often and frequent, and that's, I think, how I feel that we can better, you guys support us and we support you.
Terrific. Well, Matt, Colonel Allison, thank you so much. We're going to consider that a successful morning event here with an update from Rock Island Arsenal. You have one more thing, Matt?
Hey, Paul, I know, right? So, hey, one alibi, right? So, hey, again, exciting, what I think is exciting, right? And so you guys are going to be the first to know this. Paul knows this, but hey, on Monday, if you happen to see an olive green 35-ton World War I tank on a low bed truck transversing the Quad Cities to come to this island, do not be surprised. Todd and I were able to get one of two of these Mark 8 tanks that still exist in the world, that was produced in this Rock Island factory as a U.S./British joint venture program to move from Fort Benning to come to Rock Island. It is going to be part of a broader centerpiece for this island. It's a piece that I think is missing in terms of like the World War I capability of the organic industrial base. And so it is going to be coming here on Monday. I don't know a time yet. It'll come to the factory. It'll spend some time because it is an artifact. We're going to have to do some refurbishment, but we'll make sure the chamber knows all about our unveiling ceremony that we will have. But we are super excited that we were able to, take it away from the U.S. Army National Museum where it was going to go, and we advocated strongly that nope, it needs to come to Rock Island because that's where it was produced. So sorry, Paul, but I wanted to throw that out there. So if anybody's thinking what a Mark 8 tank is, think Indiana Jones in The Last Crusade, and towards the end, that tank, that is the tank minus that top turret. That is not historically accurate. So it does not have a turret on top, but it does have all the side gun tubes, etc. So it's an awesome capability for us.
Thanks for throwing that in there, Matt. We look forward to seeing it in real life. As that was produced by some great quad citizens well before I was alive. So let's go see that in real life again. Matt, Todd, thank you so much for joining us today. I want to thank AM General, our sponsor of today's event, for giving us this opportunity to get briefed up on what's happening at Rock Island Arsenal. I heard a few important dates, I want to throw them out one more time. We have May 26th, the EUL Industry Day. June 9th is what I heard for the advanced plan brief for industry with ASC. On May 19th, I didn't talk about this, but the National Defense Industrial Association is hosting a virtual series. Mr. Jay Carr, who you heard mentioned, leads Army Contracting Command, will be talking at that session about the future issues, programs, and critical programs that defense contractors need to know about. So those are some important dates. And then look at that Roundup for businesses. I know that we have a lot of businesses who want to increase their opportunities, and we have an important opportunity to serve Rock Island Arsenal and the many employees and residents that live and work there. So thank you to the Quad Cities Chamber members for joining us today. And we'll look forward to having you with us again later this year. Have a great day.
Thank you.